And Jonathan, all set? Welcome to the Master Plan Implementation Committee meeting for October 15. To get started, Jonathan, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We're going to make some slight changes to the agenda so that we can accommodate schedules that arise in real life. But we do have several important items to undertake. I'd like to skip immediately, if it's okay with the rest of the board, to a vote on and a very brief discussion on the town meeting warrant items, Articles 10, 11, 12, and 13, what our recommendations or support might be. They're listed in the agenda, and I think they're also pretty well described and categorized in the copy, which all you should receive today in the mail or posted online. They're described in some detail, each of them, and so I could certainly open the floor for discussion.
Okay. Actually, I can put it on the screen if...
That would be terrific. If you could do that, it would be much appreciated.
Try to switch.
Oh, I see.
Thank you.
Sure.
I'd like to just point out while you're looking at the material
okay.
very
Let me
briefly,
know
each and every one of these
Oh, yeah.
appears in multiple forms and in multiple times in the master plan of 2017.
So that's a good point. So I think as members of the Master Plan Implementation Committee, we've got to keep in mind that when we think about these items, we need to be thinking about them from the perspective tonight as members of the Master Plan Implementation Committee. When we get to town meeting, you're free to think of them in terms of a taxpayer, individual voter, and do whatever you want to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
But unless you have a specific all your objections and/or support for these articles should be from the point of view as a member of the Master Plan Implementation Committee, and not as your point of view as necessarily as an individual taxpayer or someone who lives near a project or knows someone who lives near one of these projects or something along those lines.
Yeah, I'd just like to remind everyone here, some of whom were members of the, basically who helped put together the quote master plan, which has been followed pretty with persistence by the Board of Selectmen and by the Planning Board, that in point of fact, these are items that are not new. Some of them are 20-some years old plus, and we have people sitting in this room at the moment who were there at the beginning. A lot of us were not. However, the other point I'd like to make, and this is just in line with what Mike said, is that one of the things that were emphasized in the master plan is that we have to avoid thinking silos. We have to think about the relatedness and the connection between these various tasks or goals. They're not standalones. The sewer, the water supply issues, any of these are not necessarily standalones. They relate to each other, sometimes very closely, so closely that I feel, and I'll be prepared to say this at the meeting if it comes to that, the town meeting, that the town has got to get in the habit of thinking about these items as part of an overall effort to do things for the town as a whole, and not necessarily to treat these as individual items as they're listed in the master plan, as listed in the warrant, excuse me. So as it stands, we can do this one of two ways. We can take each of these individually, whatever you're comfortable with, or if you feel that you have enough information and are prepared to vote on them as a group, I could entertain a motion for either one.
I think we should vote each one individually, because it will go in the materials for town meeting
Right.
as the MPIC voted in favor of. I mean, I guess if you did it as a group, you could still get that message out there, but I think it would be more appropriate to do them individually.
I'm more comfortable doing it individually so that you each have a chance to mention something. So I'll start off by Article 10, This is the Littleton Common appropriation for, anyone want to speak to this one? This is the very first one, the sewer.
Sewer, right. It says little common appropriation amendment, but we're talking about the sewer.
That's correct. Is there any comment anyone here would like to make? It is in fact a financing operation.
A borrowing operation, and so
Yes.
it requires two-thirds.
Correct.
Two-thirds vote, which I think is,
At town meeting, it will require, two-thirds.
which will be the one thing that
And
might
if,
be.
and if it goes outside the levy, it will require a simple majority at the ballot.
What's the status of that? I thought they were proposing to keep it in the levy, but,
I don't honestly know the answer to that question.
Maren, do you know?
The latest I heard, which may not be current, was that Board of Selectmen was moving forward with having the vote today on, or at town meeting on the article, and then proposing a ballot vote for partial.
Right. I think the idea is that, and I think that question will come up also with, potentially on the library building, is that the Board of Selectmen and the FinCom are supporting the idea of voting at the ballot so that we have the option to go outside the levy to whatever extent the town thinks it's appropriate. Could be 100%, could be less than 100%, could be 0%. But once you have that vote in hand, you now have the flexibility to decide down the road how you want to finance it, whether it's, wholly inside, wholly outside, or some hybrid in between.
Right, and that's how I heard the discussion in relationship to the library.
Right.
Oh,
But that's not what we would be voting on.
No, we would be voting strictly to say we're in support of sewering the center, the town, the common area.
And borrowing the
As
money.
necessary.
Yeah, the mechanism
Right.
of borrowing is basically may turn out to be a separate issue entirely, which doesn't change the merit of
Right.
having the
Right.
sewer.
So I fully support it, just in all of my experience, being on that original committee, my knowledge of what Chase has shared with us in the past. So
You want to put your baby to bed?
I would love to.
Well, it is related to all the other things going on in town, because
Exactly.
without it, it affects land use and a whole bunch of other things. So
Yeah.
make no mistake, this is not
Yeah.
a standalone thing, and the town has changed to the point where I'm not sure how one avoids protecting health and safety, let's put it that way, as well as housing.
It is all of that, protecting what we already have, as well as a necessary infrastructure step for everything we've been dreaming in the rest of our master plan work.
It's also what the town wants to move ahead, because without this, it makes it, a lot of other decisions about land use, especially housing, become that much more expensive and difficult to execute.
I've always but certainly since I've learned about the issue, I've certainly favored a sewer for a number of reasons, though many of my good friends in town are adamantly against it, and we have arguments all the time about this. And I think for some people, it's sort of, they don't want development, and they feel somehow that sewering promotes development, and I say, well, look, we got plenty of development without having a sewer, so I don't think it's really going to affect that, and I think it's something we need. I mean, everybody's been so clear about saying that this is only for the common. Personally, I would like to see it cover a lot larger area, but I take it that's not in the cards right now. I would like to see my own property being able to access a sewer, because I think it's, from what I've seen from my neighbors who have to build these mounds that may cost I know my next door neighbor spent $45,000 to build a mound in their backyard in order to pass, they call it Title V.
Title V, yeah.
That, I favor it for so many reasons, but I hope the sentiment has changed enough so that the sort of people who were totally anti-sewer will I don't think anybody's gonna change their minds, but I hope that they will be outvoted.
Okay. Okay.
I will make a motion that the Master Plan and Implementation Committee support Article 10 on the October 28, 2019 town meeting warrant for the Littleton Common appropriation amendment.
I'll
Second.
No further discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
I see a unanimous vote on number 10. Article 11, property acquisition for the smart sewer project.
There's some question here, if a parcel has been finalized by the date of the special town meeting, it will be presented at town meeting. Otherwise, this article may be passed over. Is anybody aware of whether that site has been finalized or parcel has been finalized or not?
I don't have any information on that.
I haven't heard.
I guess Chase would probably
I
know,
don't
but
know.
he's not here. So,
However, there is a need to acquire a piece of property in order to execute the building of the sewer. So again.
Well, there is in the sense that if we don't choose to place it on property that the town already owns,
Correct.
and there is some pushback on that in terms of trying to mitigate the impact on homeowners who may or may not abut a piece of property that would host that type of facility. So I think that's what we're thinking about. I mean, I think this is pretty clearly aligned with Article 10, and you intimated that, Mike, at the beginning of the meeting.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of these overlap.
Yeah.
I mean, you're right, Jonathan, it's a little tricky because it's so vague at the moment. This is almost like a placeholder, and we're gonna find out at town meeting exactly what the details are, but I think it's so closely aligned with everything we just talked about a few minutes ago that it's an easy thing to support, you know.
Yeah.
As a board,
I
anyway.
agree. I mean, it would be silly for us to support Article 10 and not 11.
Yeah. So do I hear a motion
I
regarding?
make a motion that the Master Plan Implementation Committee support Article 11, property acquisition for the smart sewer project on the October 28, 2019 town meeting warrant.
I hear a motion on Article 11. Do I hear a second?
Second.
I hear a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
That's also unanimous. Water treatment facility. Article C.
Yeah, Article 12.
I'm sorry, Article 12. I'm sorry, I referred to our agenda.
That's part of your master plan to take over the world. That's a
No,
different-
actually, yeah,
that was a
my
different
motive is
thing.
very different, but it's all right. It's on the track. I should just point out that it should come no surprise that this is part of multiple, shall we say, statements of priority in the master plan itself.
Mayor, sorry, can you just scroll up to, just so we can see the bold?
So I remember reading a flyer that I got from the water department, and it said there were two things. One would be that they would, something about this filter for this PFAS, and then the other one was so that the sewer would be basically handed over to the water department to be in charge of. Is that all encompassed in Article 12, or is that two separate?
No, that's two separate.
Okay.
Two separate things, yeah.
So, I don't know if I can jump in.
Please, you,
Absolutely.
yeah, please.
So this article is incredibly important to us, as
could
everyone.
you identify yourself? I'm sorry, I don't know you.
Yep.
I probably should, but.
So my name is Dave Ketchin. I'm the Assistant General Manager of the Light and Water Department.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well. So as you all know, we recently received test results back showing that we have PFAS in our water system. Specifically, Spec Pond had amounts that the DEP will soon say is over the limit, maybe come January. So this article is basically asking for the borrowing of money to fund for temporary treatment at Spec Pond and to fund towards a permanent solution. We're which we're working with engineers right now to kind of finalize. That permanent solution, unfortunately, will be more than what we're asking for now, but this will get us started with the construction part of it. And it's tied into our Whitcomb Ave treatment facility as well, that we plan on building. And that's where we plan on putting the permanent treatment. So I don't know if you guys have any questions based on that.
But this particular water treatment facility is just basically put your thumb in the problem, not necessarily to bring it to a complete solution.
So basically, it's going to get us temporary treatment right away. We're gonna figure out some sort of temporary treatment we can install at the spec pond plant. I don't know if you guys received the notice today. We actually put out a watering ban. I know it's kind of a weird time of year to do that, but with the PFAS in our spec pond facility, the DEP is kind of asking us to minimize usage there, so that we're not using that water unless it's an emergency. So this would allow us to fund temporary treatment there, and we're getting numbers right now. We have a ballpark number on what that would cost. And then further on that, we would be able to install some sort of permanent solution, which we're working with actually CDM Smith, consulting engineers, to help us design that. Right now, it's looking like it's going to involve transmission main between Spec Pond and Whitcomb Ave. And hopefully we can just expand upon our already designed treatment plant at Whitcomb Ave and add it all in there. That's where the second half of this article comes in play, the Article 97. So we would need that removed to actually do that. And we'll be able to explain why that's the most fiscally responsible plan at town meeting.
And to clarify, because it's a borrowing article for the town, we need to support it, but ostensibly this will be supported by the Elliott Water Department and the ratepayers.
Exactly.
And not by the taxpayers.
Exactly.
Per
Yep,
se.
yep,
Yeah,
that's
this is
important.
this is like the sewer, it's
Yeah.
a self-paying operation,
Right,
as it were,
exactly.
with a timeline on it.
But because of the way the way we're constructed in terms of reporting mechanisms and things like that, this has to be a vote by the taxpayers, even though it's being supported by the
By the
ratepayers.
ratepayers, exactly.
Thank you.
You constructed the treatment plant at Spectacle Pond not that long ago.
That plant's pretty old now. It's actually pretty outdated, and we actually so I'll get into it in my presentation there, but the filtration system we use is very outdated. We use coke and membrane filtration there, and the facility is just not made to keep up with our system now. And that being said, the filtration there now only filters out iron and manganese. So PFAS is an entirely different animal that takes an entirely different filtration method that we'll have to insert
And you
into.
can't install that at the current facility? What will happen to the current facility?
It would take a major uphaul, and it would. We're completing our study now, but it would prove to be more costly in the long run.
So how many treatment plants will you have when you build this new one on Whitcomb?
So our hopeful goal is to only have two treatment facilities. Right now we have Spec Pond, we have Beaver Brook, and hopefully we can eliminate the Spec Pond plant because it's outdated and run down. And
So you're at two,
Add.
you would expect to remain at two. The question is, it's going to be two, but one in the current location and one in a new location, and decommission one in its
Exactly.
current location.
Exactly.
It's in the same watershed, though? The proposed new one would be in the same watershed as Spectacle Pond, or?
No, so the Spectacle Pond, we have different wells there that pulls from Spec Pond, and then Whitcomb Ave actually pulls from a separate watershed, which I'll note that Whitcomb Ave and Beaver Brook found trace amounts of PFAS as well, but they're well below what the DEP is assuming to be the new regulated level.
So to be fully educated on supporting this, what would happen if Article 12 did not get voted in? What, if you didn't have the support, what would happen?
We would have to come up with a different way, first, the most important thing is temporary treatment at Spec Pond. We will not be able to make it through next summer with that offline, which is the case now.
Would we get fined or something? Like, what would happen? Would
Health.
just,
Well, we wouldn't be able to support the town water-wise.
yeah.
And then, I'm not exactly sure how the DEP would come down on us, but I assume if that is over the limit, they'll take some sort of measure to either stop us from using it completely, maybe, you know, there've been neighboring towns like Hudson and Air that have, you know, been forced to buy bottled water and
Wow.
give that out to customers, which
Okay.
is not something we really want to do.
No.
But you're fully anticipating that if we authorize this, we will avoid that outcome altogether.
Yes. Yep, so, well, that's the hopeful plan right now, that we'd be able to, right after town meeting, finalize our temporary design, begin that construction, hopefully have that on before May 1st, and be able to actually use Spec Pond next summer and be able to support the entire, all of our users.
Okay.
What's the origin of the phosphate contamination?
So that's a tricky situation. There's a few different things. There's actually hundreds of different things that this is found in. We are working on discovering where that contamination was found. It is kind of key to note as well that Air has a treatment facility on Spec Pond as well, in Air, and they did testing there as well, and they actually had to shut one of their plants off, but their Spec Pond facility found more traces of PFAS than ours did, so they're working on discovering it as well. It's in things such as, you know, Teflon,
Yep.
any of the non-stick plastics, the firefighting foams, different it's all man-made chemicals.
Yeah.
It's really, it's nasty stuff.
And it leaches into the water supply as the...
Yeah, there's a few different areas we're looking at discovery right now. I don't want to say anything with
No.
Yeah.
pointing fingers, but
No, I was more interested, not necessarily which operations were, or properties, or it was more the origin. It's basically Teflon, plastic, and all the rest. I just want to make it clear, this is all coming from what we would call everyday stuff that
Right.
gets in our water.
Yeah, it's not natural.
No. It's worse than that.
Yeah.
Want to talk about chemical stability? Okay, you got it. Okay. Are there any other questions?
No. It seems like a no-brainer.
Yep.
I'll make a motion that the Master Plan Implementation Committee support Article 12, Water Treatment Facility on the October 28, 2019 town meeting warrant.
I hear a motion. Do I hear a second? I'll second. I hear a second.
Second.
Any further discussion?
I didn't hear it.
It's okay. Is there any further discussion?
No.
All those in favor of Article 12 indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
That's also unanimous. Thank you. Finally, Article 13, the library building project construction. I'm sorry, I'll give you a chance to absorb.
So here it's explicitly stated that it might come under or go beyond the tax levy, and it might be.
And will require a ballot to overvote.
It's stated here.
Let's start at this end. Sorry, Lyle.
Yeah.
No, it's okay if you're not finished reading it. I don't want to.
No, just formulating what to say. I mean, would always be behind such a motion anyways. The fact that it's here upon us now is a great thing. The plans that are in place are excellent design of available space that we have to do it. And other note is seeing that the library folks have put together $700,000. They are doing everything they can and deserve to be lauded for everything they have done to bring this about. So with the money that's available from the state, we'd be foolish to not put it to good use, and I would like to see that we support this as the master plan committee as well.
Mike?
I agree with Lyle. I mean, I would say this one is a little interesting in the sense that it blends in with, potentially with other goals of the master plan regarding, whether it's a council on aging space or a community-wide, facility that had space for programming, whether it's recreational programming or library-type programming. And I think that in Littleton, sometimes it gets difficult because it's easier to make a series of small to medium decisions, and then in hindsight, we say, oh, we could have built a public safety facility that had a fire department and a police department, right? We could have built a high school and moved the football field up to the high school. But, we're always making decisions and trying to say, well, that would be a bigger pie to swallow, that it might be difficult. And I'm not criticizing or arguing the people at the time, because they all made weighted decisions. That at the time, it was the right thing to do. And, hindsight's 20/20, and everybody can be a Monday morning quarterback, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that from a master plan implementation committee, I think we should support this article, but I just wanted to throw out the caveat that we may be back voting on another article down the road that is similar to this, and we're going to say to ourselves, it would have been great to, coordinate, implement, get some economy of scale, so to speak. But I don't see to Lyle's point, if we did try to do that, we would clearly miss out on the matching funds
Yes.
that are available to us. So at that point, for me, it's an easy decision to say, let's just support it. And I kind of just wanted, from a process point of view, just to put a little caveat in.
Well, I think that's a very good point, Mike. I mean, I think you're right that at this point, there's not much we can do other than support it. But, you said it's like Monday morning quarterback. Well, at this point, it isn't anymore. Because, as you said, we've always seen this in the past. So in the present, maybe in the future, we can get somebody or other to, that's what sort of planning should be all about.
Don't disagree.
Is kind of trying to think of how things could fit together and
Right.
how you don't have to have, I realize the other reason why it's not just that one thing comes along and another thing comes along, there's a certain group that has an interest in a particular thing and they push that thing, and then there's a different group that has an interest in something else, and maybe they should talk to each other and
Right.
sort of work together, but they tend not to, and
But part of that is, to your point, is that that's why we did the master plan,
Yeah.
and that's why we have a master plan implementation committee.
Yeah.
That's right.
So
So
we should be
hopefully we can
doing
try
that.
to avoid that as we all go down the road together. And a road that also, by the way, doesn't have a finish line. I hate to tell you that.
Yeah, no.
But there is no finish
No,
line.
I appreciate, no, that's a good point, Mike.
I'd like to bring up a point in this discussion, sorry, Megan,
No.
because
Yeah.
I want to make the comment that there was something left out of the discussion that's, shall we say, deeply concerns me as the chair of this committee as well as a citizen, and that is that Littleton has changed, shall we say, these are all obvious things. We've changed, but changed at a pace, both demographically and who we are and where we're going. Unfortunately, we have not addressed the issue fully of the resources needed. And by resources, I mean dollars and people. And the reason, in part, I think in no small part, that we find ourselves doing what we would call incremental changes, where it would be better, for example, if a library and a community center and a few other things were all on the same, quote, campus. Because
Yeah.
we are now at the size, we're right on the cusp, the cutting edge. The water issue, there's a whole bunch of them all listed. They all indicate we're not tiny little Littleton. And we just have not figured out a way to get our resources, both financial and people, in the same room, so the debate does not occur over priority, which is a false, shall we say, it's a false premise. The issue is, how best do we do this with the dollars we have? We don't have the dollars to do many of these things, so we're moving closer and closer to the recognition of it as we discuss going outside the levee, like that's a shock. If we want Littleton to be Littleton, we're going to have to basically find the resources appropriately to do it. I've finished my soapbox. Megan, thank you.
Well, just the fact that what Lyle said about having the matched funds, to me, there's opportunity cost, if we don't do this. That's, the understanding of what we would lose if we don't take this opportunity. That's, so that's what I'm thinking in support of it, so.
This is a rhetorical question, but I have no idea how willing people are going to be when we hit, shall we say, the point where we have to make a decision to do things, quote, outside the levy. In other words, we're going to basically say we're going to tax ourselves at a slightly higher level for a brief period of time in order to accomplish what we need to accomplish. Because make no mistakes, if we don't do these things, nearly all of them, Littleton is not going to do well for itself. And incrementally, it's a deep concern.
It's an investment.
Oh, yeah, and this is, a lot of these are investments that pay for themselves. The sewer is one of them.
Yeah.
And basically, water is another one of them. So, and the library does pay for itself, but in ways that are not necessarily easily quantified.
Yeah.
But without it, it'll hurt the schools, it'll hurt parents, it has very profound effects that affect, in the end, both financially and socially. All right.
I make a motion that the Master Plan Implementation Committee support Article 13, Library Building Project Construction on the October 28, 2019 Town Meeting warrant.
Do I hear a second?
Second?
I hear a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
It's unanimous. Thank you very much.
Mike,
you
do you
very-
think there's any way, that should really be one of, if we're the Master Plan Implementation Committee, one of the things we should be doing is trying to get this sort of plan, joint planning instead of each thing in a separate, as my wife always says, silo.
Yes, she is correct. She was listening to our deliberation. That is basically on our next meeting plan, which we'll discuss later. Mike, I think that you're,
Do you want to do 2, Status of Master Plan Implementation Communication Draft?
I would like to do that, yes.
Okay.
Mike, you're up. Number
So
2.
Chase and I were charged to take a look at coming up with an idea or ideas of how to update the status of the master plan implementation and communicate that to the boards and the community. I have a first draft. I did it. I took some of the items on the a lot of the ones we just talked about and kind of updated it. I will have it ready for the next meeting for all of us to review, and then we can decide if the format is sufficient and then the content is sufficient for the purpose. I'm hoping that the format will be amenable to most of us with minor tweaks. The content, I'm open to suggestion. I just kind of put what I knew, but I don't know everything. I don't pretend to know everything. My wife says I pretend otherwise, but I don't. I really don't. And then, we can work it through iteratively, and then when we've got it, we can, put it out to the community and the various boards. And with the goal, as we stated at earlier meetings, being, once we've got it down the way we like it, then it becomes a process, where we use the same process over and over again, and we can pass that on to other iterations of this board and keep it going. And I think we talked about how that's important. The idea of having a master plan implementation committee is important, but the idea of having that kind of living document where generations, as we move through this, of boards can look at it and see where the roadmap is and where the forks were taken and where we hit roadblocks, et cetera, then I think that's going to be meaningful to them.
Just want to remind you that anything you produce, you can label them draft.
Yep.
Send one to Maren, and she'll.
I'll give it to Maren, and she can label it draft. I'm not that good at word processing. I can write well, but I can't word process very well at all.
Well, keep them separated. I'd much
Yes.
rather keep the right well.
That's a good idea.
Yes,
That's a good
good. Well, thanks very much for the report and for keeping on
Good.
it.
Am I free to go?
You're
I
excused.
appreciate your indulgence.
Anybody want him not to go? Well, I want him.
No,
Be with you, Mike.
You'll have to chase me out.
All right. Well, we'll make all the crucial decisions after you're gone.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks,
Good night.
Mike.
Hey, Mike.
Okay, I'd like now that we finish this, I'd like now to turn to the Littleton Water Department, and thank you very much for your patience and indulgence in contributing to our discussion.
No problem. 1 minute. Let me just pull this
Just so to bring you up to date, just several months ago, I happened to see something that revived, came from many sources, many pieces, but it revived for me at least something that happened during the master planning process itself, and that is an expressed concern about amounts of water, quality of water, and how development and water, shall we say, are intimately connected with each other. And by development, I mean not only businesses, but I mean quite explicitly population, and how populations use water and where the population is, and also the issue of protecting that water supply. And it raises the question, what are the, shall we say, boundaries and limits of growth when you're dealing with a resource so crucial to us? Without further ado, you're up, Dave.
All right, thank you. So yes, as Mike said, he had asked me to put together this presentation sort of describing our customers, our water source, our volume of water, everything to that point. And then about a month or so ago, Maren actually reached out as well to see if we could get some facts and figures on the common revitalization,
Yes,
as well as the Taylor Street and MBTA revitalization. So that's kind of a combined presentation into one. So here's a bit of an overview. I'll give a quick brief about us on LWD, some general usage information, some water rate conversation, and then our future projects and how it relates to the master plan.
Might make sense for us to
Yeah.
sit on the other side.
Yeah, okay.
It's very hard to see with craning our necks.
No,
like
it's okay.
that.
Absolutely.
You're good.
You're good, yeah.
I want to talk to you guys.
No, we like to see the size of the village. Anyway.
All right.
I'll
so-
stay here. I'll be your audience.
Perfect. Okay, so moving forward, so a little about us. So we currently are made up of 100% groundwater. This is just a couple facts and figures on us. So over the last 25 years, our maximum demand month was 43 million gallons in July of 2016. Right now, our maximum pumping capacity is 2.45 million gallons per day, and our maximum storage is just over 4 million gallons. So this is just a quick, this is our GIS map. I know it's tough to see, but I wanted to throw it up there. So basically, all of the colored lines throughout Littleton are water main. We have over 80 miles of water main, most which we plan on replacing hopefully soon. But with that being said, we
Is
also
that
have.
what's going on at the end of Foster Street or at the turning point of Foster Street?
Yep, so that's tied into one of the town's paving projects. So I can speak more on that later if you want me to. So here's sort of the slide that Mike asked me to get. It kind of breaks down by our customer type and their gallons per month. And you'll see later how I use these numbers to basically estimate the different scenarios of the master plan. And then this is just a bar chart showing those same figures. So here's a graph of our usage over the last 20 or so years, 25 years. So as you can see, it's our total system usage. The green line represents our residential usage. The orange line is our commercial usage, and the navy blue line is our total usage. And then on bottom there, the light blue line is the rainfall in inches per year. So as you can see, the usage has been trending upwards over the last 25 years, and we only expect that to continue to trend upward as, of course, the town develops and there's more of a need for water.
Any sense, why was there that big hump around 2010, 2011, which then kind of came down some and then?
Yep. My guess is that's when Very Fine was at its peak, and maybe we had a very hot year that year.
So a bunch of years.
And as you can see, as it jots down, that's obviously when you can tell that we had
Oh, I see.
either.
It's commercial is a big,
Yeah, you can see that when the navy blue line spikes down and up, that's when we either had a very wet year, a very, very dry year. Obviously, the wet years are less usage years and dry are more usage years, so that could have been a particularly dry year along with a lot of commercial.
yeah, I was
usage.
looking at trends though, and that included the commercial usage has a
Yep.
big jump in 2007 or 8, whatever it is, and then sort of trends downward until last couple of 2 years ago.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure what came online in 2007 that caused that to happen. But I can get that.
Be interesting to
information for
know.
you.
I mean,
Absolutely.
There's also, I'm sorry to interrupt, but the other thing is that since this is what we call user-dependent operation in terms of rates and funds, what's interesting, when you get greater use, the amount of dollars that are available to the operation go up. And obviously, on the other hand, if you watch the residential level rise slowly but surely, the take-home message would seem to be, depending on how you want to allocate priorities and resources for use of water, maybe having a water-intensive user commercial-wise in town is not a great idea. And it should be instructive when we talk about getting businesses and all the rest of the town. Who are they, what they are, and what they're water, which should be one of the first things at the front and center. So, sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, no worries. I'll actually get into that a little
Sure.
bit later. I have a different graph that I think would be helpful to that point that you just raised. And then here's just a couple different numbers of our total gallons pumped per month over the past 5 years. It's just the average, and then also broken out per season. And then I have a graph basically showing that, we're a summer peaking system, as you guys all probably could have guessed. And then I just threw this in here. This is our rate structure. So basically we have 5 different levels of users, and as you can see, there's a threshold of usage or gallons, and your rate is driven by that and whatever you fall into. And as you can imagine, level 1 through 3, which are the lowest gallon users, are mostly residential, and level 4 is commercial. And then the total, you can see that residential is the majority of our users here. So here's our sources of income, and as you can see, our water rates drive our income almost completely. Debt services, connection fees, those are little compared to our water rates.
Why is debt service income?
It's just
I would have thought that would be out though.
it's just money. Yeah, it's revenue that we've generated just through debt services, through collections.
Is that people's
Don't
late?
follow that,
Is
I
that
mean,
late fees or something?
I would think you borrow money and then you have to pay. Debt service as an income, how does that work? Who pays that? Not a big deal, so go on.
Yeah, I could explain that later, but
No,
we
no.
can come back to that. And so water conservation, as I stated earlier, we did just implement an outdoor watering ban, which is not normal for this time of year, and I sort of explained that. But normally during the summer, our water conservation used to go in effect upon the Merrimack River water levels. And recently, actually this summer, it just changed to the Concord River. So basically, whenever that stream flow drops to a certain amount, we'll get alerted that we have to go into effective a water ban. And over the coming years, that's going to tighten up. DEP is going to get more strict on when we have to do that, and possibly even limit outdoor watering, to a day or two a week or something like that. That's down the road.
And it wasn't just me, but we didn't have a ban this summer.
No ban this summer. I don't believe we had one last summer either. This spring was particularly wet. Later in the summer, rainfall kind of fell off, but yep, there was not one this summer. So now getting into the common revitalization. So I wanted to put, this is from obviously the master plan, I wanted to put scenario 3 and 4 in this slide just to reference, because this is what Maren and Mike asked me to reference here. So we generated some estimates based on that. So we counted out each different type of customer in each different type of scenario and multiplied that by their estimated usage to get their gallons per day demand. And as you can see here, in scenario 3, we estimate just over 53,000 gallons per day being used. In scenario 4, just over 122,000 gallons per day used. And you can see that the housing and the retail are really the bigger users in this group for those two scenarios. So stop me if you guys have any questions. So some estimated costs with the Littleton Common revitalization for LWD. So a couple things that we would have to do. We would have to make an investment in upgrading our water main along Great Road, going east from Robinson Road. And then we would also have to upgrade from King Street from the common area all the way to the Westford town line. We plan to apply for a MassWorks grant, sort of like the Foster Street, was Foster Street MassWorks as well? I don't think it was.
No, in front of the point was Mass
In front of the point was, yeah, okay, so we plan on applying in 2020 to replace some of the water main on Great Road. And at the same time, we have not made plans yet to replace the King Street infrastructure, but that is definitely something that we are constantly thinking about. So Great Road, we would have to install approximately 2,400 linear feet of 12-inch water main. And King Street would be approximately 2,200 feet. And you guys can see our estimated cost here. Great Road infrastructure is $600,000 just for the water main, and then an extra $120,000 for new hydrants and gates. And King Street is $528,000 for the water main and an extra $60,000 for the hydrants and gates. And on both of these projects, we would like to try and utilize hopefully the town sewer construction. That way we can save costs in paving and potentially police details along the way. And at the end, I'll tie this all back in together with what we have available. But moving on to the Taylor Street revitalization. So same chart here. So we sort of broke this out into what we estimated for housing, retail space, office space. And this one was, I believe it was very housing heavy on the demand. And we estimated this total demand per day as 130,000 gallons per day. And that's sort of the max build out scenario that was shared with us. And with this, so we already have infrastructure upgrades that are going to be addressed in the 2024 MassWorks grant on Foster Street, and then the Foster Street project that's going on right now. So that infrastructure, we won't need to revisit as the common. So projects that we have ongoing right now. So everyone knows about the Wickham Ave treatment facility that we're trying to build. We have the Wickham Ave well replacement project that should be kicking off shortly. Basically, we're gonna re-drill new wells into the existing site. It should hopefully give us a little more yield in water of what we can pull out of the ground. One that's in the air right now is the Cobb's well and potential treatment facility at the Cobb's area. And if we were to get that, that would increase our capacity by 30%. And then a couple others that, Beaver Brook, later this year, we're trying to increase the yield at Beaver Brook as well and increase our water quantity. And then we're trying to, you know, replace some various water main throughout town, and one in particular is at Russell Street Bridge, which we've had multiple breaks over the last couple of years there. So we're doing we have a lot of balls in the air right now, which all should hopefully help us gain more water and be able to sustain the growth that the master plan looks to achieve. So my last slide here.
Is that Nagog Pond, is that,
So that's
any possibility that's gonna happen, or?
It's tough to say.
Oh,
We're still pretty early on in the process there, and that's going to be dragged out for maybe a couple of years. So that one's hard to predict. So moving on to our last slide here. So this kind of ties everything back together. So the blue kind of step line there is our max pumping capacity, what we're predicting over the next 20 years. The red line below that is our max capacity with our largest source of water offline. And then the orange line is our projected maximum demand, which we, I think over the 5-year course, we added in those numbers that I went through earlier in the slide. So as you can see, the Beaverbrook project and the Wickham Ave project, once those projects are complete, our water quantity should hopefully increase enough that we can really support full implementation of the scenarios that I went through earlier in the slideshow. And then Cobb's Well, obviously, that would really put us at ease. And then Nagog Pond and a few other future sources that we're trying to discover right now would really benefit us and you know, keep us at a healthy gap between where the demand looks to be and what we can actually supply. So with that being said, all of the scenarios, the max build-out scenarios that I went through, they don't look too concerning to us. Obviously, there's a couple projects that we need to complete here before we would want any of those to be completed fully. And I think the way the timeline would work out, I don't think anything would be completed before, you know, Beaverbrook and hopefully Wickham Ave. So with that being said, I feel confident that we can assist you guys in planning out the town. And obviously, this will change over the coming years and always fluctuate. So I appreciate being involved now, and I'd like to have us keep being involved and answer any of your questions that you guys may have.
The takeaway I would get from that is that the Beaverbrook and Whitcomb Avenue projects are necessary to meet needs. The other ones are not so necessary, and if they come in a bit later, it's not a big deal. It looks like even, you know, Whitcomb Avenue looks like it's pretty well able to, till you get to the very end, but that's not till
I think we gotta be careful.
2035 or something.
I think we gotta be careful here. There's a different, Whitcomb is not just a volume, it's a quality issue.
That is as well, yes. I
I'm
wasn't
sorry.
speaking from the quality standpoint. This is max volume. And another thing I should have mentioned before, this is maximum pumping capacity. We 99% of the time don't pump, don't have access to do that because of various projects going on in our system, you know, cleaning wells, maintenance. So we couldn't sustain that for a long period of time with upkeeping our system. So having Cobb's and the future sources gives us that much more leeway to continue to improve on our aging infrastructure and continue to, I guess, improve our system in general.
So is the Cobb Well to tap a water supply that we aren't yet touching?
Yes. Yes.
More there, we just haven't gone after it.
That's tied in with the Nagog litigation. So hopefully that's looking promising. It's not so much tied in with it, but they are intertwined. It's complicated.
abutting.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Cool, well, I'm
Is
encouraged.
there any rule or regulation that requires the water supply to always be 50%, for example, I'm making this number, 50% more than we are actually using? Or, because it's another variable here, you say we have enough, right, it looks that way, but if you add the 50% what we call emergency or backup, are we still okay?
That's a good question, and I'd have to default to our water department staff on that. I'm not exactly sure if the DEP actually sets regulations as to, reserve capacity.
Yeah.
I'm sure there is something somewhere. I'm not exactly sure the numbers or how that compares to future.
And as far as you know, I realize these are projections, but climate change, regardless of what we'd like to say, there's something going on, and there's predicted rises in not just water on the shores, but also temperature inland, which changes how everything else works. Do you have anything that informs you, or can inform you, that you don't have access to, or do have access to, that measures the impact of elevated, shall we say, wildly fluctuating climate, forget about weather, climate, as well as increased temperature? And the answer is we don't have access to it, or it's there.
Well, relating that to water levels,
Yeah.
just one easy thing to point to is studying the Merrimack stream flow levels
Yeah.
and the Concord River. That's sort of where we could gauge that. There's also things we could do around town, measuring vernal pools and
Yeah.
things of that sort, that we would see the impact of some sort of
What's the lag time, you think, between measuring those and its effect?
It's a great question.
I mean,
It's a great question.
That's why I was asking about the excess capacity. It's just.
Yep, that's a great question, and it's something that we'll have to plan for in the very, very near future.
Yeah, I'm sure that I can tell you the Defense Department's got a whole room full of hard drives with all that information for them.
Yeah.
They knew a country they've got. Okay, they have it for us.
Yeah, we definitely have access to
Good.
data like that, so that we can try and relate.
Yeah.
So yeah, moving forward, I don't know if you guys, I'm not sure the next steps for you guys, I guess, on these scenarios and how that relates to us.
I just say, have you ever, as your department, ever put together something like this, as informative as it is, for the planning board and the board of selectmen and the other committees in town? I mean, we're here to promote and guide, and I don't mind promoting what you're doing or trying to do with this, but do you need, it would seem to me this would be, this is something the planning board and the board of selectmen and conservation, anyone having to do with open space, land use, that better be educated.
Yeah, it's definitely something we can make an effort at educating.
In other words, if we promote this, which means everyone from the Economic Development Committee to the Board of Selectmen and everyone in between should hear about this.
Absolutely.
And a cold, hard, I mean, this is very encouraging. On the other hand, it's good to have a picture about what's feasible and what's not.
Yep, absolutely.
And I do appreciate the fact you use scenarios in both cases that represent what we'll call, extreme, not extreme, but basically they're idealized. Scenario 4 for the implementation and the comment, for example, is the most extreme, which, at least not for the next 5 or 6 years, I don't see that happening, but who knows?
Right, and I appreciate your question about what's next on several of those. I'm happy to sit with you and show you where we are on both of those.
Absolutely.
Big picture, the form-based code work that the planning board is doing is a jumping off on scenario 3 from Littleton Common.
Okay.
Probably knocking down the max build-out on that a little bit,
Okay.
given what the Littleton residents have told us they would like for the vision of the common. And then we're not nearly as far along on the Taylor Foster Street area about, what zoning should be proposed to help bring that to fruition.
Okay.
But yeah, it's.
Yeah, what I'm
exciting.
thinking is I'd like to get, I mean, this is me doing promotion, I'd like to get your group and your data and your culture in front of these committees on a regular basis so it becomes an embedded thing.
Yeah, I think that's great.
Embedded, in other words, they automatically say, let's talk to these guys first,
Yep.
or second, worst case.
Absolutely. We would be more than willing to do that, absolutely.
And, I mean, as we look at it here, it looks pretty, you know, things you have to do and so on, but doesn't look like there's big constraints on anything. We look at these plans and we say we need to get this much more water, and we can do that.
Yes.
Is that more or less correct, or are there certain things which might really be a, you know, restriction? I mean, is there some point we're gonna, but, you know, where it's possible that we would butt up against, no, we can't do that because there's not enough water?
How about not enough money?
Yeah, those are both issues.
Well, money seems like,
They're both
the
issues
more
that-
water we use, the more money we get, so that doesn't seem like such a big issue.
And a lot of these things that you see here are, you know, battles that we're fighting today to try and gain more water and you know, try and make clean water. As of right now, today, we're struggling. We have a water ban during fall. So it is really important that, you know, we do succeed at finishing some of these projects and increasing our capacity. Because if we aren't able to do that, then yes, there is a limit, and it's closer than a lot of people probably realize.
I'm looking at the left side of your graph there. That's very graphic,
Exactly.
very graphic.
Exactly.
So is this something that, for example, will inform the town meeting?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying the whole thing, I'm just saying.
It won't be at this depth. That'll be, yeah, that'll be focused on definitely the future. We haven't finalized that presentation, but I'm sure we can speak about the master plan and that.
No, I'm not asking you to, I mean, I just want to make sure that the public gets to hear, outside of this committee tonight, gets to hear at least the thinking that goes on about preparing for, and our current needs, our midterm needs, our part-time needs, as appropriate for whatever's going on in town meeting.
Yeah, and we do hope to present that at town meeting, that exact topic, so.
Megan, any questions?
No, thank you.
Lyle?
I learned tonight that it's the flow of the Concord and Merrimack that tell us when the water bans come.
It's
That's
crazy. Does-
important to learn.
Well, you
I
see, you have
didn't
to
know.
have some way of
Makes more sense,
measuring it,
but-
right? And that's a thing
Exactly.
to measure, and it's within our, you know, zone,
Yeah.
so you figure
Yeah.
what, you know, what those are showing.
There's an old movie with Jack Nicholson, it's called Chinatown, which deals with the water wars in LA. You want to really get a flavor of what it can turn into. Just imagine that, Jack Nicholson walking around. Okay? See the movie.
Alright.
It looks like we get a couple of tastes soon
Yeah.
to let us see what we don't want to end up at. So
Yeah.
we
Yes.
want to encourage your further work, and the fact that you've gotten this whole presentation together, yeah, we should encourage you getting it out and sharing it with everybody around town that has the
Absolutely
ability
agree.
to impact it. So
Jonathan, further questions?
Nothing from me, thank you. It's been very interesting.
Out of the hot seat.
You did, no, you didn't. Thank you
Thanks,
very
Dave.
much. for
Thank
coming
you.
in.
Thank you guys for having me.
Very helpful, very interesting.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming in.
Yeah,
Very nice.
very helpful, very,
Nice to meet you as well.
interesting to get some sense from this perspective, which
thanks for coming.
you don't think about.
Okay. Again, thanks very much, David, for your participation and contributions. We can now move on to member input liaison updates. Lal, any news?
So interesting to see David here walking in, but my involvement has been with this 5G small cell towers. So David is both electric light and water departments, so Happy to learn about water. Small cell tower, we had meetings over summer, I guess I would have to say, until it became obvious that we were not going to have anything to prepare and present for the fall town meeting, so that changes the whole schedule to spring town meeting, but it's not as if we're going to be overtaken in the time in between. But 5G communication is coming, and we, it's not that we have no choice, but we need to have our voice prepared for when it comes, that we can guide and implement what we want it to look like in town. What are we talking about? Utility poles around town. The FCC has stated that they want to have 5G communication enhanced as you're passing through thriving metropolises like Littleton. And that means that the different cellular communication providers will be looking to add their antennas on top of these poles. It's out there, but it's coming, and the Littleton Electric Light Department is trying to be prepared for it. We have representation of planning board as well there, so to try to speak to what we want it to look like when it does come is something that we're trying to share amongst the boards. Boxborough is part of it too, since we chatted to Boxborough, and to try to rein in so that it's not every utility pole has this outgrowth from it and there's attached hardware that goes along with it besides. So it's coming, but we're doing what we can to control what it's going to look like. And I have certainly become much more aware of what our utility poles look like driving around town.
Any questions?
How many poles are affected? Like every so many?
This is an interesting question. So, probably real life humans, we've noticed that when we're looking for Wi-Fi, we've noticed there's a 2G and a 5G in most people's homes. 5G.
4G.
I just got 5G.
Yeah.
I just got 5G the other day when I upgraded.
Yeah.
This is from Verizon?
AT&T.
It's not real 5G. It's okay.
Oh.
So 2G is what most homes have. If you have FiOS, I guess, is the determinant, you can have 5G. So I have both in my home. And you would think 5 would be better than 2, but 5G doesn't like to go through a lot of walls. So they need open communication, they need to pass the signal along. So small cell
Yeah.
is to go 500 feet at a whack until you can get to a bigger tower. So how many poles is that? A lot of them, especially when there's multiple carriers of cellular data.
Wow.
So that's what is being talked about, and the Federal Communication Commission has said it's coming, and it's our job to be prepared for when it gets here.
And also, there's some issues when it rains.
Rain.
Yes.
What is
it'll-
that?
It'll block the 5G does not do well, not going through walls, but when it rains,
Oh,
so,
it happens occasionally.
or snows.
Water and electric light department, they work together.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, I have this thing about the fact that some of these, the amount of stuff that's on the poles now is just, and in between them is just so enormous. I mean, I live right across from what most people would think is the most beautiful building in town, and you can never get a good view of it because there's always some, wherever you go, there's some kind of big, massive thing that's blocking it, and this will, I guess, will make it worse.
A very slight aside, if I may. So in my business, I bring solar power to homes. Not everybody's jazzed about the look of the panels, but when that comes up, one of the things I get to say is, imagine I came to you a century ago and I said, I'm going to put up all these poles and all these wires and hang them off your house. You'll love it. Here we are. That's my report.
Thank you. Very optimistic report. Thank
There we
you.
go.
Megan, anything?
I don't really have anything to add.
Jonathan?
Not really. bunch of historical commission things are moving along, so that's good. I guess one of the big things is the 12 Robinson Road
That's the big thing.
project, and I guess I don't know what that, Carolyn's on the CPC, right?
Yeah.
So the,
Carolyn, could identify yourself and just,
Sure, Carolyn Mueller. I'm on the ad hoc committee for 12 Robinson Road, and actually I was going to, during public input, kind of give you an update since it's in the middle of the common.
yeah, that's,
So the last few things, we just had the dendrochronology done, and we haven't got the results back yet, but we tested various pieces of the building to try to get a date, to kind of narrow that down. And that will inform, we have someone working on getting the building on the National Register, so getting that status. So that's one kind of big project that the town has paid for, so we're working toward that. We're also working on getting the historic deed restriction completed. It's with town council now, we're just kind of, those last little few things we're trying to iron out, but that should be done shortly. And then on the October 28th town meeting, for community preservation funds to get $60,000 to put on a new roof on the house. The barn is okay, so we desperately need a roof. We're hoping that everything works out and the weather holds off, and maybe we can get it done before the snow comes. And then we'll slowly kind of creep toward finding out what will be done with the building. That's of course the biggest and the final step, but things are moving along. I know a lot of people think nothing's happening, but it's all kind of behind the scenes. We're getting there. We're getting there.
thank you.
thank you, Carolyn.
No, this is good to be.
Easy for me to.
Well, no, this is,
I don't have to say anything.
at least you have compatriots, okay? Lone Ranger. I've had some interesting experience talking to chairmen of what we'll call committees that are involved in, you would think, a master plan. Just let me summarize that this way, that I've met with or have communicated with about between 6 to 9 committee chairmen. And what I hear most about, and I'm going to go back and keep doing this both formally and informally, is lack of resources to do much of anything on their own. And I'm excluding the planning board and the board of selectmen from this list. They can get the resources and do a lot of what they want to do. A lot of committees also are deeply involved in reacting to proposals or addressing appeals from the public residences to address issues that affect property, and they just don't have the time and, again, the resources to branch far away. And we're this. One of the key committees, the Economic Development Committee, until recently has been struggling with getting a full panel of members. I believe they've solved that problem. So now that, and I have a meeting scheduled for the end of this week, as a matter of fact, when our meeting is over and their meeting is over, to see how they're going to, what they are in a position to do to start pitching in to address the issue of resources. As I said, a lot of committees are either do not have the resources to have minutes of meetings or choose not to, I can't always tell. And very often they are discussion forums with the exception of the historical committee, commission. Your gang basically does things along with the planning board and the board of selectmen, and even occasionally, although they're not mandated to do anything except say no or yes, there's the Board of Health, which I'm a member of. I can tell you they're always doing something, but they're not pushing, they're protecting as opposed to doing much. So there are quite a number of committees that have discussions but have limited resources, and this seems to be a common theme, both financial as well as human resources to execute, both at the committee level and at the professional level as well. So I'm benefiting a lot from the liaison effort by discovering what we'll call one of the stress issues for the town, and that is how do we get resources, both the human resources, put them together with the necessary professional resources and the, shall we say, the means, the funds to execute. We're at the point where we've got to start taking this a lot more seriously than we have in the past. Familiar theme.
Yes, I second that. I think that's I've thought that this has been an important issue all along, even though I've been pleased that the Historical Commission has been actually getting a bunch of stuff done.
Yeah.
But even we find that to be a problem, and I think it's really a problem, and it's one of the reasons why I haven't pushed for any kind of attempt to make a historic district or anything, is because then you get bogged down in exactly those kind of permitting. You spend all your time doing permitting, and you don't have any time to actually do planning or, moving forward with things, and that I think is an issue. I think particularly some committees like the Conservation Commission.
Oh, yeah, they're buried. They're buried with responses. Okay, I want to move to public input.
I gave my piece.
Okay, thank you again very much. I invite members of the community to come in anytime to our meetings. They're open. We need you here. It's great to hear from you after the fact, but I want to provoke you to come in before we provoke you. So if you can, please come in.
Can I just ask Carolyn something? Do you have a sense of when the dendrochronology report will be done?
I think he said it might be at least a month. All of a sudden, he's got like 8 projects, like he said, it comes in fits and starts. So it was a couple of weeks ago, so it might be another 2 to 4 weeks.
Thanks.
Okay, I think we can move on now to the minutes.
Yep.
Have we all had a chance to review the minutes? Any corrections, additions?
Do you have any?
I really like the blue bar. I know it's trivial, but made all the difference for readability.
Well, all right.
That's two rods and cones.
I move we approve the minutes of.
Wait,
no.
Megan?
Oh, I'm good.
I am good.
Okay, I've read it.
I move we approve the minutes of the MPIC for July 16th, 2019.
I hear a motion to approve the minutes as written. With all those in favor, by anyone wants a second?
Second.
I hear a second. Any further discussion? I hear none. All those in favor of approving the minutes as written for July 16, 2019, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
So moved, so accepted, so voted upon. Next meeting so that all of you hear it at once, it's, town meeting is Monday, the October 28th. And I guess we can consider this one of our meetings, if we wanted to. And the next meeting, what would be the scheduled next meeting if not for town, leaving out the town meeting?
Yeah, if we stick with the third Tuesday of the month, we'd be on Tuesday, November 19th. That
Okay.
is not Thanksgiving week, it's the week before Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving's late this year.
Yep.
Okay, so November 19th is our next meeting. Does anyone here know now that they're otherwise disposed, so like we can plan accordingly?
I'll check on
I
that.
can be there.
I think I can be there. I don't have
Okay.
anything right now.
I want to give you advance notice so that you can, all right, good. Let's hold that. Location, do we know?
I will request this room.
Okay,
We had confirmed through this meeting, so.
right.
And then I guess my question was, do you want me to go ahead and reserve the third Tuesday for
Yep.
several months out?
Yeah, we're still, you say no, and then we have to come back, okay. I just want to let you know what we're trying to do for the next official meeting, which is November 19th, will be on the agenda. I want to let you know that as part of our mandate or part of our task, we are required, or it's good judgment on our part to, shall we say, meet with the Board of Selectmen in a public setting as well as with the planning board and give an update report. I plan on doing that, but I just wanted not forewarned, but to advise you that in our goals for the coming year that are required for us to submit to the Board of Selectmen and others in the town, I included, along to the initial 7 that we were doing, and we're going to continue with that with our liaison program, but also I thought it'd be a good idea to collect everything that we have learned in our liaison program and interacting and getting things, trying to get things started for implementation. Of course, the results are not in, since we don't know what the results of the town meeting are going to be. There have been some bumps along the road, such as through unforeseen circumstances, the movement of form-based code has been put off for, shall I say, next town meeting, which is not too bad, even though I think probably we would benefit a lot from having it done here. That's what happens when you move something, quote, new, even though form-based code is 40 years old and has been in the public domain for quite a while. But I am going to basically collect a lot of the information we have about various parts of the town that have been either involved or not involved enough in the implementation of the master plan. The other issue is, which I want to bring up now, only because looking at the future, and we're not going to make a final decision, I just want to get it in. When does an implementation committee function for the master plan? When should we be sunsetted? That is, when are we not finished so much as when the master plan goals set by the town now become part of what the Board of Selectmen and what the planning board and other boards do in the town. In other words, are we necessary to continue the promotion and implementation? And we can only assess that by watching what the committees do, what the boards do. At the moment, I would not advance the notion of sunsetting the Master Plan Implementation Committee. I do know that if we do survive, shall we say, move on to the next year or two beyond where we are today, that we have to look for a, shall we say, a different perspective. It may be very different, plans may be different, but I want to get the thinking done about how we refresh ourselves, whether or not the board, even if the composition of this group changes. I want to make sure that we have something to pass on that instructs them about our experience. Now, my hope is that one of us, more than one of us, stays on in the future and can carry the ball further with other folks joining us. But the question should be, why does the town need an implementation committee to do what we'll call, what they want to do, the obvious?
Yeah. So we have like goals for each of those 7 things for a percentage of like how much it's already been implemented?
Yeah, when
like
we talk about implementation, we have to put in more, and that's one of the things I want to have at our next,
Yeah.
because very frankly, if the only thing that's really been, as it were, in cold, hard terms, really finished, not finished, but brought to a point where you can say it's done, was done actually by the historical group, led by Jonathan.
Not
right?
led by me. No.
Well, your group led it, okay? Having to do with housing, I think a lot of progress was made, and as far as I know, you could even say that it's implemented, okay? So in terms of 1 or 2 aspects about housing, it's done, all right? Or it's far enough along that we know it's going to be finished.
Yeah.
But as far as the common is concerned, it's still, as it were, chat.
Yeah.
Okay, and I'm classifying it as there's no shovel in the ground.
Right.
When shovels go in the ground, then we know something is actually going on. So no one ever said implementation was going to be quick and easy. It would be slow. I think that in comparing our implementation effort to others, Maren, do you want to make any comments? Since you're out there looking at other towns.
I think, to me, one of the keys was having the implementation committee meet first with the update steering committee, kind of hand off the baton, and then it was clear that this group had the means to move forward with implementation. And your approach of reaching out to the boards and committees that have the authority to take the actions and move the implementation features forward, I think that's been very successful as well. And the ones that you haven't worked much with yet, I I see that Mike's been reaching out to them now, and I would recommend you keep moving forward with that part of it.
It is, yeah. Reaching out and getting responses. I'm not complaining, it's just this is the hardest, not the hardest, but the weakest part of the implementation in terms of depending on others to do is basically when you run out of resources and time on the part of some of these committees, it's hard to, what do you give them? What should we give them? Or
Well,
what
couldn't that be one of our sort of goals going forward, to sort of see if we could develop some kind of plans or some sort of suggestions as to a way these committees might be empowered to do more, or something like that?
I would wonder if just asking the question, what do you need to be more effective working towards the master plan goals?
Yeah.
Just asking
Yeah,
that
and
question.
that question's been addressed to them, and I'm trying in a very gentle way to say that the ones that's, so far, I mean, this is not a complaint, it's a fact, most of them, the issue is, do the members have time? If they don't have the time, can they get the expert or assistance they need? That's money, and that's the one thing that it's either one or a combination of both. Your group, for example, knows who to go for. Nothing holds you back for asking for funds. You cruise ahead. The same could be said of the library trustees. There are examples around town who are far more, shall we say, aggressive. I hate to use the word, but we have something to do. We need the resources. We're going to go do them. And unfortunately, that is not characteristic of all the committees that you'd think would be interested in promoting what they're doing. So that's why, and also, it has to do also with mandates. There are only, N number of committees that actually are legally, as it were, in a position to execute. There's a reason why the Board of Selectmen is called the Executive Division, okay? So make no mistake about it. There is no equivalent of the Department of Defense. Okay. I'm just saying that it comes back to who we are and do we need to make changes. And this is one of the things I'm going to try to
Yeah, okay, well,
try to
that's
get
great.
at.
I think that's very good.
So
I'm
it's-
totally in favor of that.
Yes.
Without thinking as clearly as you have, I've had a sort of inchoate sense that that's something that would be very valuable to do, and I've tried to think of some sort of things that could work in that direction.
Suppose town meeting format just doesn't work anymore. How do you feel about that? On that happy note, do I hear a motion for adjournment? Any other comments from my members?
Glad you brought up this topic. It's been rolling around my mind. I look forward to the discussion.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to take action, so I may be shot at sunrise, but we'll do it. Okay. Do I hear a motion to
So
adjourn?
moved.
Move to adjourn. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded. Do I hear a discussion? Please, no. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right.
We are adjourned. Thank you very much,
Thank you.
and thank you to the public for attending.